I am the Craft Dad. Alright, YouTubers, it is time for Foam Sword Part 6. I know Part 5 kind of was an interlude, not really a part, but I'm back. I've been able to make further progress on my swords, and so here is Part 6. These are the swords, how they look as we left off. As you can see, they're ready for, almost ready for Warbler. I still need to do the back hilt part, or not the hilt, but the back part of the sword that protects your hand from the blade. This part right here in the image, I've printed it off. I'm going to cut it out and use this as my template because I don't want to cut up the full-size template that I made. Again, using my foam, roll of foam that I bought from the foam factory. I simply roll it out, clamp it down, and I pattern out my foam that I need, and I cut it out. This is why making the template the way I did is nice, because you can go back and easily reprint out different parts that you need in order to do some of the different parts or shapes within your template without having to go and completely cut up your full-size template that you made. Yes, I'm using up more ink. I put my printer on fast draft, but that's okay. I'd rather use the ink and do it this way than to destroy the template, because if I ever want to make these again, or a variant of these, I have templates that I can use. For the paper, I'm still using my 120 weight cardstock. This gives me more firmness in the paper so that I can work with it instead of it getting all crumpled up and being ruined. As you can see here, I've cut out the middle part of the template, and I'm going to use that to mark out what needs to get sliced out from the foam templates in order to create that middle portion gap of the sword. For this part, I'm just simply using an X-Acto knife or craft tool. Next, I'm going to be using a bit that I found for the Dremel. It's a cone type bit. I'm going to use that to smooth out the inside. With this one, you have to use it at a high speed in order for it to strip the foam away. Otherwise, it doesn't work very well, and you have to be careful because the bit will go under the foam and create like a flap within the foam itself, which is not what I want. So just taking my time, I smooth out the inside edge that I want to be nice and fairly sharp for the corner on the inside. Now you can use foam scraps. You can use the regular foam you got, create whole pieces. In this case, I decided I want to use foam scraps. So I'm cutting off, I'm using the edge piece of the foam mat here, cutting off the little interconnecting pieces here to create a nice long straight piece. From this, I'm going to use two of them side by side to create the square part on the foam base. And so as you can see here, I got two of them side by side. I've cut the angle so that gives me a nice slot for the foam piece that's going to go over the central gem there. And then I just use those as templates, and I cut out the required amount that I need, 8 of each piece, because each sword is going to use 4 itself. To prepare the pieces, I simply hot glue them together first to get a side-by-side rectangle with that sharp edge. I'm not too worried about the line because it's going to be covered in Worbla and you won't really see it. So otherwise, if this was all going to be purely in foam, then I would make sure to get the edges or the seam between the two foam pieces glued nicely, and then I would use the Dremel to make it a nice smooth surface so you couldn't even tell that there was a glue edge right there. Next, I'm going to do like I did before. I'm going to place these edges under the large template that I have. I'm going to then punch through the same holes that I created before to mark where I need to drill the holes through the top foam in order to let the LED light through for the top crystal. And again, we drill through using the drill in our backboard to keep the glass from being damaged, and we create the holes that we need to. Same thing that we did before, so nothing really new here, just a repeat of what has been done before. So after drilling, next we have gluing them onto the sword itself. To assist with this, what I ended up doing was hooking the power for those specific that specific LED up. I applied the hot glue, and then I lit up the LEDs in order to align the holes on top so that as much light as possible comes through. This doesn't really help in lining up the edges that I've already created, and so I know I'll have to go back and re-smooth them out. Next, I start pinning down the other part of the template that I created and cut out the middle piece from. This is so that I can mark the inner boundary of the piece because I plan on laying wire and LEDs down through this area too. At this time I added more hot glue to fill up the hole that I made from earlier and start filling up the holes from the two pieces that I added on. Be careful when adding the hot glue. If you forget and touch it, you will burn yourself, which I did multiple times because I ended up resting my fingers or hand on that hot glue. So next, get the marker, outline the inner part of the foam, and I next put the template on and mark a dot at the top and two dots at the side, lining up with where I want the wires to go. In this picture here, you can see where I marked the wires that are going to go out to the LED and the tip there in the middle of the sword. Here you can see the LED. I've spread the little arms coming out of it so that it matches up with the black lines. Next, I just started adding on the resistors and other wires. I start manipulating the wire so that it fits out correctly. In this picture here, you can see the wire stripper that I love to use. This thing is great. When hot gluing your wires into place, don't be afraid to hold them down. As you can see here, I'll hold them with my hands, but I make sure to hold them far enough away, or I'll hold them with a tool. In this picture here, I'm trying to bend the wire to create like a little step because it's gonna go down the foam and along the handle. So we got the glue going on, and as I glue, I just simply work my way back, slowly gluing and holding in place to ensure that the wire is not lifting up in the different places. This also helps hold the connections together. I don't like using solder. It's very messy and problematic and time consuming. So I just use hot glue. Because this is not a moving piece, it should be fine, but you got to make sure your connections are really good. Here I'm melting a notch into the glue that I did in the center so that I can stick the LED that's going to illuminate that central gem there, and then again holding it in place with needle nose pliers and my fingers. As you're working with wires, don't forget you need to mark them. Which ones are your hot wires and which ones are your ground wires or your black and red, positive, negative. Next I take some 3M electrical tape and I use this to help hold the wires in place that are going to run along the handle on the outside back down to where I plan to do the battery compartment. So simply take it and wrap it around. I do this 3 times to hold the wire securely in place. In this picture here, I'm using some scraps that I have to find one that fits the central portion so that I can cut that out. It would have been easy to do this all as one piece, but I decided not to. Uh, I like to reuse the pieces as much as I can to save as much foam as I can. Foam is not like Warbler where it is reusable. So I marked the central gem there where it's going to be the hole on the top and drilled it out like we did before. I then line it up and glue it into place. After gluing, I then used the Dremel again and did some shaping or just matching the sides up. As you can see here, it's in place. Next, I'm going to glue on the other part of the template that I had made that I used as the guide for my wires. So I just glue it and hold it in place. This takes time because you want to make sure it dries, get the glue near the edges. After that, I take the Dremel and I shape the piece to the foam, to the base foam structure that I have, just so I don't have a lot of pieces overhanging. This is just to clean it up. You can do this later. I felt like doing it at this stage as I work with each of the swords and each of the sides. Because I didn't do this all as one piece, you can see the middle part is sticking up higher than the sides. And it should be all one nice level piece, at least until I do the center portion with the warbler. So I sanded it. Next, I'm taking some of the scrap 120 weight paper that I have, cardstock, and I'm making another template and grabbing my bag of scraps and finding pieces that I can put the template on to cut out. This is to fill in the gap between the two pieces that are currently on there. This one should be a little higher um, than the smaller foam, and not as thick as the foam mat that I'm using. So I simply Dremel it down to size after cutting it out with the X-Acto knife, and just kept fitting it, test fitting, put it in. Okay, I got to take more off the bottom or the side. And then once that's done, I hot glue it. Don't forget, don't just hot glue the base. You want to hot glue the sides so you get a nice secure fit. That way also it sticks together nicely. Once that's done, you just hold it in place and let the glue dry. Once the glue dries, you're good to go. You can do some more dremeling to get it to fit down to the right size so that it looks nice. Next, you do it for the other side, so it's just a rinse and repeat. Here are the two swords that I'm working on with all of that work we just went through finished. Next, at this point I got tired of getting caught by the wire, so I cut them all down to size to make it easier. Here you can see I'm now adding the gems to the top surface. I remember I had started adding them before and realized I needed to thicken it up, so I ripped them off. So here I am adding them back. As before, put glue in the center, press and hold it down, and then you can simply pick the glue off once it's dry. It just, you can use something to kind of pry it up a little, and then it just peels right off from the foam and from the gem, leaving a really nice, the gem's just sitting there. You can't tell that it's being held in place by anything. As you can see here, I'm using my favorite tool and stripping the wires to getting them ready for wiring up. So here's the two swords with the gems on in the back. Here's a closer up of the back part that we just did. You can see the slight difference in elevation there, and you can see the wires glued in the middle. Next, because I'm dealing with so many wires in the back, I decided I did need to solder this, even though I hate soldering. This took me a while, as many as the solder would fall off and everything. I use a soldering wire with a core flux. I think I just need to go buy some flux and use a combination of the two, but it takes time and it doesn't heat up as quick. Someone told me to go look at the cold solder gun or cold soldering, so I'm gonna go look that up. That way I'm not dealing with this long hot soldering iron, which I have burned myself on before. And I almost burnt myself this time too, but luckily I didn't. After I soldered it, I covered it in hot glue because I don't want the connections making connections with something else. And as you can see here, testing the LEDs. You want to test, test, and retest. So here's the sword, and you can see the LEDs are glowing nicely on both sides. And you got the gem, or the LED that's shooting across the sword. Here it is on the top side with one good looking guy. We are done with the foam base of our sword. Next we get to start using Worbla. So next week look out for my Worbla video as I start adding Worbla. I also did a small testing with it. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to my video if you liked this video.